Well, good evening, Columbus. Welcome to the Southland Center here at Columbus City Schools, and welcome to all the parents and families and stakeholders who are gathered with us on Facebook Live. We're about to get started. I'm Mo Wright, president of Rhema Consulting, and I'll be serving as moderator for tonight's conversation with our finalists for Columbus City School Superintendent. We're excited about that. Give them all a round of applause as they get ready to come in just a moment. So just to kind of level set the conversation, what do we know? We know Columbus is a great city. We've got a vibrant business community. We've got great sports and entertainment, bustling neighborhoods, and a diverse population of residents and really students of all ages in our community. We're the seat of state government. We have a number of public and private institutions that call Columbus home, larger research institutions, as well as a growing tech and entrepreneurship ecosystem. And yet Columbus is not a perfect city, we know. Columbus has been challenged by too many citizens who go without the necessary resources, or without affordable housing, without the economic prosperity that everyone in our community should be able to enjoy. So we come to tonight's conversation when politics and public policy sometimes collide in conversations about how and even what is taught in our public schools. The Columbus City School District was established in 1845 and is today Ohio's largest school district in Ohio's largest city. The Columbus City School student population is as vibrant and diverse as the Columbus community. The district currently serves 29,000 households, making up 47,000 students in 115 schools. The CCS families in our community represent 104 countries around the world. As a district, CCS is one of the premier employers in the region. We employ 9,000 teachers and staff across our community, and there's a 7-member school board who oversees a budget of about $1.8 billion in their operating budget. And so we have our work cut out to find a leader to bring all those pieces together and all those stakeholders. And so our members of the Columbus Board of Education are also here tonight listening along with you to hear what these candidates have to say as they go into their formal interview process on next week. I will allow any members of the Columbus Board of Education that are in the room to stand and wave just for a moment. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. So I told you some of the stats. I talked about the challenges, and yet urban districts like Columbus are asked to deliver each and every day on a singular promise: to ensure that every student is highly educated and prepared for leadership and service, and empowered for success in a global community. So I'm not just a moderator tonight, I'm also a dad of 1 graduate and 2 current students in Columbus City School District. So I, like you, am listening to these candidates about what they will do and how they will lead our school district to even higher heights. What is clear about tonight and this moment is that leadership matters. And it's exactly what we will need is leadership for Columbus City Schools. Tonight we welcome 3 leaders from across our nation who are finalists and vying for the position of Superintendent of Columbus City Schools. Let's prepare to meet our candidates. But before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the discussion format tonight. Since early this morning, all of the finalists have been doing data in district. So they've been around the community, they've been in various buildings, they've been meeting with various stakeholders like all of you throughout the course of the day. It's been a whirlwind day of immersion in the Columbus City School District, and tonight they are invited to come here to the Meet the Finalists conversation. While we know we won't get to all the questions that you all submitted outside, we will be submitting all of those questions to the members of the Columbus Board of Education prior to next week as a deliberation within their interview process that's upcoming. The final questions for tonight's discussion were developed by me, and those questions have not been seen by anyone, including the candidates or the board. In addition to those that I have prepared in advance, the questions that you all put on the boards outside will also be fed to me throughout the course of the conversation, and I'll be asking those questions live tonight as well. There will be no live Q&A from the audience, so we ask that you respect that and refrain from any verbal reactions or comments during the discussion to keep this a comfortable environment for our candidates. And some questions will also be posed to every candidate, while others may be specific to an individual candidate. You will get the opportunity to listen to the perspectives of these accomplished public experts in education for their vision for leading Columbus City Schools. With that, let's prepare to meet our candidates. First, I'd like you to welcome Dr. Angela Chapman from right here in Columbus. Dr. Chapman joined CCS in 2019 as the Chief of Transformation and Leadership in charge of principal leadership and regional support of school communities. She's led the implementation of 6 new regions in an area superintendent model that was put intentional focus on leadership development and targeted regional support. She has spearheaded the implementation of an $8 million grant, redesigning the principal pipeline that aligned with the CCS Portrait of Graduate framework. She's been instrumental in launching district-wide programs such as Read and Recovery, single-gender schools, dual language programming that has increased academic outcomes, staff retention, and student satisfaction. She, of course, is currently serving as the interim superintendent and CEO for Columbus City Schools. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Angela Chapman to the conversation. She's got a long walk. Next, we welcome from Pasadena, California, Dr. Brian McDonald. Bryant currently serves as superintendent of the Pasadena Unified School District. He is responsible in Pasadena for receiving grant funding that allowed for the creation of several magnet schools and the development of a nationally acclaimed math academy for accelerated learners, as well as an innovative app development academy. Brian has led the district in the passing of Measure O, a $516 million bond package to increase student access to technology and to upgrade classrooms and schools. Dr. McDonald has led the development of a robust graduate profile that requires all 12th grade students to prepare and deliver a presentation demonstrating their cognitive, personal, and interpersonal competencies prior to graduation. He has collaborated with parents, employees, and community partners to accelerate improvements and target resources to close the achievement gap. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to our community Dr. Brian McDonald. And finally, we welcome Dr. George Eric Thomas from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Dr. Thomas currently serves as the Associate Superintendent of Minneapolis Public Schools. For 20 years, he served in Cincinnati Public Schools as a teacher and in various leadership roles ranging from district coordinator to chief innovation officer. He has contributed to Cincinnati Public Schools district earning an B rating for consecutive years on the Ohio Report Card as their chief innovation officer. He launched the MORE program to support at-risk males and lead the development of innovative schools, which increased enrollment by 5,000 students in the Cincinnati Public School District. He has partnered in Georgia with the Georgia General Assembly to draft legislation that incentivizes teachers to choose and to remain at underperforming schools. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. George Thomas to the conversation. In just a moment, we will allow each candidate have an opening 2-minute welcome and opening statement. Candidates, I would ask you to introduce yourself to the Columbus community and perhaps share a bit about this career opportunity at this time in this place. Why Columbus City Schools? Dr. Chapman, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It is certainly a pleasure to be here with you this evening. I currently have the opportunity to serve as the interim superintendent and CEO of our Columbus City Schools. It is certainly my desire to become the permanent superintendent and CEO for Columbus City Schools. Why? First of all, as a resident and a parent of a CCS student, I believe in the power of our district. I believe in our people. I believe in the possibility. I know that as a district, we have been through a lot of change and a lot of transition in the last couple of years, but we are primed and well-positioned to begin reimagining the student experience here in CCS that will not only transform our schools, but create new opportunities to create thriving learning communities in all of our regions. So I'm very excited about the opportunity to be here with you all tonight and talk about my passion and my vision for reimagining education in CCS.
Very good. Dr. Thomas.
Thank you so much for sharing your evening with me and with us. Over the last day and a half, been really impressed with many of the things that are going on within the community. As I've had conversations with individuals, as shared, I've spent most of my life in Cincinnati, so I've been up I-71 more than a few times. So there's a little bit of a network that I have in the area. So in having those conversations, one of the themes that came out consistently was that there is a energy among individuals, among organizations, among various entities to do something exceptionally special within the school district. As I look at my background and I think about the work that we did in Cincinnati, I think about the Community Learning Center concept. I think about the Strive concept and collective impact. I think about doing all the different things that we did to become, literally, in Ohio, the highest performing urban school district. Obviously, Cincinnati is not Columbus, so this isn't a situation where you take one set of strategies and you just absolutely replicate it. It's not quite that simple. However, the word is leadership. And when you've had an opportunity to be a part of a successful organization, that's about leadership. It's about identifying strategies. It's about monitoring and measuring the outcomes of those strategies, replicating what's important and what's useful, and making a pivot when things are not going in the right direction. That's the experience that I had in Cincinnati. I was then given the opportunity to go to the University of Virginia. The UVA program was identified as the most successful school-driven or district-driven approach in the country. So for the course of 6 years, I worked with school districts across the country to help them drastically improve their outcomes. And based on what the data says, we did an exceptional job with that. At some point in time, hopefully there's an opportunity for me just to briefly speak about some things you may have read. What you have not read is that in Georgia, 70% of the schools that we work with achieve their highest results ever. What you have not read is that we reduce chronically failing schools by 47%. What you have not read is that in Georgia, there's something called a climate and culture rating. Student surveys, teacher surveys, parent surveys, and all the different metrics around attendance and discipline. The schools that we work with improve their climate and culture rating by 38%. We literally help transform schools and districts. That's the experience that I bring. That experience in Georgia also gave me a really strong understanding of the political nature of many things. Quite honestly, Georgia's somewhat similar to Ohio. In Georgia, you got Atlanta and everything else.
Dr. Thomas, we could finish the introduction and we'll get back into some of that meat in just a moment, if that's okay.
Sounds great.
All right. Dr. McDonald.
Good evening, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And I just want to take this time to thank you for spending this time getting to know us as candidates for the position of superintendent. After 9 years as a superintendent of the Pasadena Unified School District, I can truly say that I have been enriched by the work that we've been able to do on behalf of kids. And I was told about this position here in the Columbus City Schools, in the city of Columbus, rather. And as I started to research the district, I was really drawn to some of the amazing things that are happening here in the school system, the programmatic offerings, the willingness of the community to come alongside the school district, some of the work that the board has done in developing the profile of a graduate, the guardrails, and so forth. I also see some areas of opportunity that my skill set and experience would allow me to work with you collaboratively to really take the District of Columbus City Schools to the next level. I really must say that as I visited schools today, and I visited Yorktown, and I also visited Walnut Ridge, my desire to become the superintendent of this great district has certainly been deepened. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the principals of those two schools, Mr. Chamberlain as well as Principal Watson. And I'm particularly impressed with the students that I encountered today. And I have to compliment Deshaun, who's sitting back there, for the hospitable welcome at your school today and for the information that you shared about your school and about this district. So I look forward to talking with you a little bit more about my experience and skills and how I might be an asset to our great district. Thank you.
Very good. Let's jump into the conversation. So as part of the community engagement around the search process, the search firm actually conducted a survey of all CCS stakeholders. There's about 1,700 responses, and it basically asked from a list of about 31 characteristics, which are the top 5 that were shared by these various stakeholder groups. There was 3 that were at the top of the list for all 3 categories. I'm going to have each of you respond to an aspect of those 3 characteristics that really floated to the top for all stakeholders. Dr. McDonald, we will start with you. One of those characteristics that the community said we want in our next superintendent was the willingness to listen to input, but to be a decision maker. Talk about a time in your career where you've had to navigate strong and maybe diverse and maybe not even opinions that actually were so positive, but ultimately you had to make the decision. What happened and how did you go about making that decision?
So yes, I guess the example that comes to mind was the decision to remove a very popular principal at one of our school sites and the level of community pushback that I received. I think we can all agree that we must do what's best for kids. We must focus on the learning, the well-being of all of our students. And so once I made a determination that it was an untenable situation, I made that tough decision to remove that principal. Now, there was a significant community pushback, and of course, I made myself available. I did not hide in my office. I went out and I talked to the community. I talked to the teachers. I talked to everyone about why the decision was made. And I tried to do it in a humane way. I did not want to speak ill of the site leader. But I think everybody realized that that decision had to be made. And so that is just one example of how I made a decision that I thought was best for the school community, but I also listened to what the community wanted in terms of new leadership at that school site. And I responded to that, and as a result, we selected a principal for that school site that led that school to higher heights.
Thank you, Dr. McDonald. Dr. Thomas, I'll have you next. One of the second characteristics that were listed in that data said that the next leader of Columbus City School has to have a strong moral compass rooted in justice and equality. I want you to discuss with this audience your moral compass and how you have used it to achieve student outcomes that further justice and equality.
Love it. Thank you for the question. Probably the best example that I can share was the development of what was called, and actually still in existence, the MORE program, Men, Organized, Respectful, and Educated. It started at Aiken High School. I was the principal there. And when I went into the school, we started looking at all our data. And our young men, particularly young men of color, they were first in all the bad categories, and they were last in all the good categories. And whether we use the phrase moral or not, I know for me, the idea of being an African-American male and having that population of students not be successful, for me, not just about improving the school from a moral standpoint, from a moral imperative standpoint, I just could not allow that to happen. So we created a structure to support that group of young men. Quite honestly, when we went into the school, it was an F-rated school. And if you actually disaggregated the data by gender, the school probably would have been about a B or C if it was just the young ladies in the building. The young men really just pulled it down. Over the course of 3 years, we went from an F-rated school to a B-rated school, largely because of what we did with the MORE program. When I went to central office, we actually had, and again, to be very transparent, we had 2 African-American male board members. And one of the first things that I was asked to do is, can we replicate the MORE program? And the answer was yes. So now, my first year at central office, we went from 1 MORE program at the school that I initially was at, and we added 9 more MORE programs. In year 2, I think that number went to 24. By the time I left to go to the University of Virginia, I think that number was up to 40. They just conducted literally their 10th year anniversary, I think last year. There was a analysis done of the progress and the outcomes of the students who were a part of the MORE program. And based on that analysis and based on that data, the MORE program is really sort of internalized within the district now. I'm really proud of that work. So again, whether it was a moral component or not, I simply was not going to allow the young men on that school to not be successful.
Very good, very good. Dr. Chapman, I'll come to the third characteristic that was shared by all the stakeholder groups to you, and that was that the next leader must have the leadership skills to respond to opportunities and challenges of a diverse student body. I want you to respond to, when in your career can you share you've used your leadership to meet the needs of a diverse student population?
Thank you, Mo, for that question. I would say that all of my experiences, the 25 years that I've been an educator, have prepared me for this moment and this time. I have always worked as a classroom teacher, assistant principal, principal supervisor, chief of schools in diverse school districts. I started my career in a school district in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, very, very diverse community. When I left Cleveland Heights as a principal, I moved to Nashville, Tennessee, again, a large urban district, and then transitioning, also have privilege and honor of serving in DC Public Schools, very diverse district. All of the decisions that we've made when we expanded our dual language programming in the city of DC to ensure that we had more dual language programming, create access and opportunity to all of our students across the city, when we created opportunities to expand single gender programming in the city of DC, was to stand up unique opportunities for our young men as well as our young women in the city of DC to meet their needs. All of these decisions were based on data and feedback from our community. We worked on the high school redesign work in the city of DC. We did that work in partnership and collaboration with our community members, with our parents, with our teachers, to make sure that we were being responsive to the needs of the community. The community identified a need. We worked with them to co-create the learning spaces to support their scholars and meet their needs by redesigning the spaces based on programming that the community deemed as a need for their scholars.
Good, very good. I want to get into this area of relationship building and community engagement. You won't be in Columbus long before somebody talks about what we call the Columbus Way. And it really is a notion that really speaks to this idea of radical collaboration. How do we pull people together from diverse backgrounds and different parts of the community and do big things? And so I'd ask each of you to respond to talk about how you go about building those type of external relationships and partnerships that really move our district forward and provide greater opportunities and access for our students. Dr. Thomas, I will start with you.
Thank you. Probably the best example that I could share is that in Cincinnati, there was an organization created, I think it's been about 15 years ago, called Strive. And some of you may be familiar with Strive. And what Strive was an organization that really promoted collective impact. And Strive brought in individuals and entities from the various sectors to identify 4 pillars that would support the work of schools in the school district. The superintendent was the representative for the district. If the superintendent was not available, I represented the superintendent. So that was really my initial really appreciation for this concept of collective impact. I think one of the things, there's actually a network here in Columbus. I don't know how engaged it is, but I think the concept of collective impact, I think, is really, really important. And I think being able to pull all of the stakeholders to the same table and really look at a strategic plan and identify how can each stakeholder be a part or a resource toward the objectives and priorities in that strategic plan. That is my experience. When I went to the University of Virginia, we actually worked with districts to sort of replicate that, whether it was formalized or not formalized, but we actually work with districts to replicate that. So that's really my experience, and that's really my lens around this idea of collective impact and bringing partners to the table. In Cincinnati, we also had something called community learning centers, if you're familiar with that concept. It's been recognized as one of the stronger models in the country, and that's bringing stakeholders and particularly nonprofits to the actual school site. So many of the resources actually were housed at the school site. So that's another example in regards to bringing in outside resources and stakeholders.
Dr. McDonald, same question. How do you go about building those relationships and key partnerships for the district?
The process of building relationships and partnerships for the school system is extremely hard work. And what it requires is that the superintendent be highly visible, not only at the school sites, but in the community as well. So as an example, I block off my Wednesdays to visit school sites. And I take the opportunity to talk about, to articulate the vision of the school system to the people that I'm talking to, both formally and informally. I also take the opportunity to hear from them, because I think very often the way we communicate, it's just simply one way. And if we don't take the time to listen effectively, then we won't hear concerns, or we might not even hear kudos. So I take the opportunity to visit school sites as often as I can. I talk to teachers, I talk to parents, I talk to students. And I learn a lot from these visits. I also spend a considerable amount of time visiting community organizations in the community. So, for example, we have a monthly meeting of the Clergy Community Coalition. I take the opportunity to update the coalition on some of the good things that are happening in our district. But I don't simply just update them on things that are happening. I ask them to support our efforts. And in many cases, they've responded favorably. Additionally, I'm a member of the Pasadena Rotary, and in a similar way, I provide updates to the Rotary members, but I also ask for their support in our efforts to improve our school system. And I think one of the things that a superintendent or any leader must do is to be very authentic in the conversations that you have with the members of the community that you're engaging with, meaning that they should feel like they're being heard, they should feel like they can talk to you about anything. And then if you make a promise, ensure that you're keeping that promise. And I think it's all of these factors that will then build trust in the community and cause people to want to come alongside the school system and support the work that's being done on behalf of kids. I'm also very intentional about talking to local politicians, state politicians, and politicians on the national level, because they can bring resources and support to bear on the efforts of the school system. So I spend a lot of time in the community. For example, I meet with the NAACP from time to time, their education committee. We have a partnership that we're working on. There's so many community organizations, nonprofits, and the like that are willing to come alongside the school district and provide support. But I think as leaders, and certainly as the face of the organization, I have to go out and engage with all of these community partners, explain to them what we're doing as a school system, and invite them to support us.
Very good. Dr. Chapman.
Yes, Mo, this question reminds me of the power of relationships. So relationships are key to everything that we do. As teachers, we know in the classroom, learning does not happen if we do not forge meaningful relationships with our students. Our students have to feel connected to their teacher in order for them to thrive and grow in the classroom. It's the same with adults. It's the same in the school. We know that as individuals, people do not leave bad organizations. They leave bad bosses. And so every day in all that I do, I am modeling the behavior and the culture that I expect to see across the entire district. This is who I am. I lead with my values as a value-based leader. I show up very transparently, authentically, and to be very transparent and clear about our goals and vision for the organization. And through that transparency and authentic engagement, that's how those relationships are fortified and developed. Certainly, we see all of our parents and our community members as partners in this work. You've heard the saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to support the work of a district, a large urban district, and a district of our size. We have to move out of our silos. This is our work, our collective work as a community. If we want to transform the teaching and the learning process and the student experience in Columbus City schools, we have to see ourselves as partners in this work. We have to think across the lines of, whether it's the lines of authority, elected officials, community, government. We have to remove all of those barriers and put all of our cards on the table. It's all hands on deck. We have to be committed to rolling up our sleeves, to do the heavy lifting. This is hard work, but it is work of the heart. And this is about creating the culture that we want to see not only in our classrooms, but in our schools and our departments and our community, across the entire community. And we do that each and every day, the way we interact with each other, the way we model how we interact with each other. We create supportive conditions. Those are the enabling conditions to show that we see you, we value you, and we appreciate you. And that is the sentiment and the sense of belonging that every student in our district should feel, every staff person in our district should feel, whether they're classified staff members, certificated staff. That is the same sentiment that our principals should feel, central office, our parents. We see you. We love you. We appreciate you. And if everyone in our entire community has that sense of belonging, then we can change the narrative for what education looks like in CCS.
All right, I'm going to stay on that theme for just a moment. And one of those key partnerships certainly are our teachers and our staff within buildings across this district. As all of you are likely aware, the start to the school year was delayed a bit with negotiations between our union and our schools. While the agreement was eventually reached, you can imagine there still exists some fatigue from parties involved in that situation. I want each of you, or whoever decides they would like to address this, to talk directly to those teachers, those staff throughout the district. What can they expect from you as their leader, and what are you expecting from them? Anyone can begin.
I'll be happy to start that off. I think one of the things that is paramount to me is helping everyone in the organization, but particularly teachers, that not only are they valued, but they're partners in the work. In some of the conversations we've had throughout the day, I sort of talked about the difference between trying to get buy-in from individuals. Buy-in means that I have an idea and I'm going to try to convince you to sort of support my idea. I actually don't use the phrase buy-in very often. Instead, I use the word, we're going to co-create it, or we're going to own it together. And what that means is we're going to come to the table as equals and create something. If you think about the difference between how you manage your personal car and how you manage your rental car, you normally have a different relationship with your rental car. It's the same thing in how you manage a property that you have to cut your own grass versus rental property. Oftentimes, when you own it, you care about it a little bit differently. So in my vision, any engagement with any of our partners, any of our teachers, any of our other support staff members, be it security, be it cafeteria workers, bus drivers, whatever the case is, we're going to come together as partners because we need everyone to have some ownership in it. It does take a village, but we all have to own the village. So as a superintendent, I don't see this as a matter of Eric having a plan. I don't see this as a matter of Eric coming up with, we're going to do A, B, or C. I'm going to sort of listen to someone's input, but then I'm going to make some decision. I really do see this is going to be a collective because it's the only way to create a level of ownership. And because the work is so complicated, this is really complicated work, everyone has to feel that level of ownership. So that's my lens. It's really about creating ownership. And that's the way I would engage with teachers. That's the way I would engage with really anyone within the district. And that's stakeholders and that's stakeholders as well.
Just a quick follow-up. Did you rent a car for this trip?
Actually, I did not.
Okay, very good. All right. Our cars are safe here in Columbus. Any others?
Hello? Okay. I'll be happy to go next. To our teachers, we certainly want you all to know that we see you, we value you for the work that you do in our classrooms each and every day, and we know that that work goes above and beyond the classroom. As a former teacher, I still see myself as a teacher, as a lead teacher. This is a learning-centered organization, and so I remain committed to thinking about the voice of the teachers and the voice of all of our partners and parents as who are their child's first teacher. But I think this is really about relationships. And we have to recognize that in the fall, it was hard. It was difficult for all of us, no matter which side we were on, related to the challenges that we were having in the fall. And we have to recognize and name it. It was traumatic. Relationships were damaged, trust was broken. And as a teaching and learning organization, just like we do with our students, we need to take the time to build and restore those relationships. With our students, we talk about restorative practices. It's the same strategy that we want to yield and lean in with adults. Whenever trust is broken, whenever the relationships are damaged, we need to have a conversation about how we begin to move through the pain, the trauma of the ordeal that the shared experience that we have. The strike didn't happen to just one person. The strike happened to all of us, this entire community. We were all there and bear witness to what we experienced. And so my approach would again be to restore the harm that was done in our community by building bridges, being present, showing how much we care about each other and about moving this work forward. It's important for us to show up each and every day as our most true and genuine and authentic selves and show how much we care for each other. We talk about with our students how we need to prioritize social-emotional learning. Well, that's not just work that we do with our students. That work begins with each and every one of us as adults. How do we show up as adults? How do we practice leading with those social-emotional skills of showing self-awareness, managing our emotions? How do we make connections to each other, connections within the team, connections with administration? That's the heavy lifting work that we need to be engaged in each and every day to create the culture that we want to have in Columbus City Schools. And we do that by leading by example.
To our teachers and staff, I just want to be very clear about how I feel. I value the work that you do. Without you, there's no district. Without the students, there's no district. And so I am heartbroken that there was a strike. But what that says to me is that there are underlying issues that would need to be addressed. And so one of the first things that I would do is to set about establishing some sort of labor management initiative where we come together, all of the bargaining units, and discuss issues of common concern. We shouldn't be trying to address the issues only when we get to the bargaining table. We should understand what the issues are ahead of time and start to put the measures in place that will get us to a favorable outcome. It is all about building those relationships that are necessary to have a productive sort of effort on behalf of our students. So in my former district, or I'm sorry, my current district, we have a labor management initiative that was started several years ago. We've gotten away from it a little bit, but what I found to be so effective about it is that we were able to sit down and discuss some of the issues that staff were unhappy about. I give you an example. One thing that we looked at were the number of grievances that had been filed, not only from the Teachers Association, but also from the classified associations. And what we decided to do as a group was to provide training to all site administrators so that teacher evaluations, employee evaluations were done according to the contracts. And I was pleasantly surprised as to how well this was received by the site administrators. But that was just one example of how we were able to come together, work on a common issue, and find a solution. So in a similar way, whatever the issues are that caused the Teachers Association here to get to make the decision to engage in a strike, I would want to sit down and discuss these issues and ensure that we find some common ground, and so that when we get to the bargaining table, we have a productive time in bargaining. Without labor peace, the district will not be able to get to the next level. The district will not be able to do everything that needs to happen for our students.
I want to stay here for just a moment because one of the audience submitted questions was around this notion of tell us about your experiences with collective bargaining, both when it goes well and perhaps when it goes not so well. So any additional comments, Dr. Chapman, Dr. Thomas, around collective bargaining? Or Dr. McDonald, if you have additional.
Well, I can go first. In the state of California, I think everybody knows, California is probably the strongest union state in the country. And, I've had my ups and downs as far as, I came from a right-to-work state in Texas. And so I had to learn pretty quickly what labor management piece looked like. And so one of the things that I quickly learned was that you have to over-communicate as a superintendent. And what I do is I meet monthly with all of the leaders of the various associations, and we discuss many things. We discuss issues that are of concern to them, but we also talk about some of the things that we want to accomplish together. So it's not simply a gripe session, but rather, how can we come together and make things happen for our students? And I think it's that constant communication over and over and over again that really helps out with labor relations, and it really helps when you get to the bargaining table. Like I mentioned earlier, a labor management initiative where it's intentional, where we express our interests and try to find those common interests is paramount. And I've had to learn over the years just how to communicate with our associations so that they feel valued, they feel heard, and at the end of the day, we get to a place where we can accomplish all that we need to accomplish on behalf of our students.
Very good. Questions around experience with collective bargaining, both when it's going well and not so well. Any additional thoughts around this?
I think when it goes well, we're able to come together around common issues and find common solutions. And so I'll go back to my previous experience as a classroom teacher. I served as the union steward for my building. And so as a union leader, as a union steward representing the teachers in my building, I served on a committee called the Teacher Administrator Partnership. And this was an opportunity for us to work together between teachers and administration to come together around common interests, common challenges, and work together to solve those challenges. In my previous district in DC Public Schools, we worked with labor partners to really engage in all of the reform initiatives and strategies that we were leading. We even participated in a leadership program at Harvard University called PELP, and this program was a partnership with the administration and the labor partners to really come together and think of one of the district's biggest challenges. You spend a week together on the campus of Harvard University in Boston, and you work together to work through the messiness of it. And you brainstorm and you problem solve until you, at the end of the project, you present with all of the other colleagues, and you come back to your district with a solution to one of the stickiest challenges that you have. And so when I think about when the labor relations, when it works well, there are clear structures in place to support ongoing collaboration and dialogue so that when there's that healthy tension that arises, there's already a structure in place to address and resolve that conflict. But again, I'm going to go back to the previous comments that I made. Everything comes back to relationships. Building relational trust in everything that we do is key to our success. Culture eats strategy every day. We can have the best strategies in place, but if we're not creating the conditions to have a strong and healthy working relationship and culture, that's going to deteriorate our strategy and it's going to work against us. It's actually counterproductive. And so even with labor relations, it's about the culture that we create in the organization each and every day. Not when we just get to it's too late when you get to collective bargaining to then begin building and fixing the culture. That's work you have to do every single day in the small interactions, the one-on-one interactions, and the large group interactions. It's how we show up as leaders that really shows that we are genuine, we are authentic, and we do what we say we're going to do. That shows that we have the personal integrity and the moral imperative to work together and see everyone as partners in this work.
Dr. Thomas?
Absolutely. You know, I think there's two structures that are really important. In Cincinnati, CFT, very strong from a union standpoint, very strong union. And it's been recognized, the labor management relationship between the union and management's been chronicled throughout the country. And it's largely based off of two structures. At the school level, there's something called the ILT, the Instructional Leadership Team. And by contract, the ILT, the majority of the members on ILT has to be teachers. So the principal has to develop those relationships, has to collaborate, has to work in unison and in partnership with the teachers. There's also other members on the ILT, so the principal doesn't have the authority to simply make decisions by him or herself. Those decisions have to be approved by the ILT, and I think 60% of the ILT has to be teachers. So you can imagine the level of, from a principal standpoint, the level of engagement, the level of trust that's necessary, the level of collaboration that's necessary. At the district level, there's a similar structure. It's called EIP, Educational Initiatives Panel. Any district-wide initiative simply cannot be determined by the superintendent's office. It has to go through EIP, and it has to be approved by EIP. EIP, by contract, is made up of an equal number of building and district leaders, that's half, and teachers. So the administration can't sit around and come up with what they consider to be some great idea and simply execute it or implement it. That simply is not allowed. Instead, the EIP structure promotes we're going to come together and compromise. We're going to come together and create that common ground. And the anchor to that, and Angela is 100% correct, the anchor to that, well, two pieces. The anchor to that is we're all doing it for the right reasons, and that's about kids, and we have to be centered there. And that we work so much together, we engage, we communicate, collaborate so much together that when it comes time to make those decisions, we've developed a certain amount of trust. There's a strong enough relationship that even if we don't agree, we're able to have meaningful conversations to get to a common ground decision, because we ultimately have to make a decision, but because we've got a strong relationship, we're able to actually make those decisions in unison. So I think it's really important.
So we've been talking around the students. I want to spend some time there talking about really our biggest assets in the district, our students. As you probably know, about 80% of the students in the Columbus City School District are minority. 53% of them are African American. We know that across most indicators, African Americans lag behind in so many factors that really can become predictors of the opportunities they will have, the success that they have access to. Are there specific strategies or initiatives you believe that will be essential in a district like Columbus in order to meet our unique student population's needs? Anyone can begin.
I'll start off with that, and I've shared a couple of examples already, so I'll reiterate those. Again, we started a program called MORE, Men Organized, Respectful, and Educated. It was targeted for at-risk minority males. That concept, if you remember President Obama's My Brother's Keeper initiative, we actually became a model, the MORE program became a model for the My Brother's Keeper initiative. We actually had members from the White House actually come in, sort of learn what the program looked like. So I think that concept, obviously you can edit it, you can adjust it to the context of a particular school or a particular school district, but the concept is creating a wraparound structure around those students who need that level of additional support. So I think that's one example, and again, that's been very successful. The second example that I've already shared is the Community Learning Center concept. The Community Learning Center concept is simply a matter of bringing in outside resources to the schoolhouse so that those resources are on site, be it a health clinic, be it getting vision, be it food insecurity pieces, be it mental health support, whatever the case may be, those resources are on site so that parents and the students have access to those resources. So I think those are two examples that when we talk about students who unfortunately go home and have difficult situations at home, and then we expect them to come back to school the next morning and master math. We expect them to come back to school the next morning, and we want all the kids to read by third grade. Well, they just saw some things at home that night, and we're asking them to focus on reading. If we don't acknowledge those challenges, if we don't create structures to mitigate those challenges, and that's why this concept of collective impact is so absolutely vital, because it does take a village. So we need those external partners to be a part of that conversation. Teachers are a part of that conversation, so that now once we mitigate some of those challenges, teachers can actually focus on learning and focus on teaching and learning. So those would be two examples that I think are really powerful. Again, we've had success with, there's been success with those two models literally across the country. And I think Columbus would benefit from the concept. Again, it doesn't have to be the exact concept, but the bigger concept of bringing those resources and some sort of MORE program or something similar to it.
So this is an issue that's not unique to the Columbus City Schools. This is an issue that we're dealing with all across the country, and it requires a comprehensive approach. I'm going to try to be as succinct as possible. It starts with the curriculum that we have in place. So first of all, we have to make sure that the curriculum is aligned with the state standards, and what's actually being taught in the classrooms are actually on grade level. So grade level work, the instructional materials that students are exposed to or utilize are actually on grade level. Students have to see themselves in the curriculum, right? So that the learning can be relevant to them. There has to be a number of support systems in place for students, meaning academic supports, additional tutoring, and so forth. There also have to be social emotional supports in place for students. As we know, many of our students, especially those living in poverty, come from pretty traumatic situations. And so ensuring that we're teaching and focusing on things through a trauma-informed care lens is quite important. But to the point that Dr. Thomas is making, we simply can't do this alone as a school system. We need to have a lot of support from the community at large. We need to have a lot of support from all of the key educational partners. And I'll give you an example of how we have worked together in the Pasadena Unified School System to address some of the issues related to students of color, especially African Americans. The African American Parent Council has partnered with the district to establish a program called Math Power Hour. What we saw was that students, especially in the lower grades, African American students were not performing well. And so the African American Parent Council worked very closely with the Teachers Association to implement this program. As a matter of fact, I'm one of the volunteers. I tutor a second grade class, or students in a second grade class at one of the school sites. Now, this is proving to be quite successful. We have board members that tutor students, and we don't just tutor African American students, but we tutor all students, but we're focused primarily on the African American students. In addition to that, I think one of the missing pieces is the communication with the students themselves. And one of the things that we've done in our district is to interview students, to talk to them, and especially African American students, and all students of color. What we have learned from them has been very impactful, because they're telling us exactly what it is that's causing them to, in some cases, underperform. And so we've been able to make those adjustments so that they're better served in our school system. And I must say that I'm very proud of the work that we've done. In the interest of time, I simply can't go into everything that we've done, but I will say that as it relates to our graduation rate, we have closed the achievement gap between African American students and Caucasian students and Asian students. And we have significantly narrowed the achievement gap with our Latino students and Caucasian students and Asian students. So it can be done, but it takes a comprehensive effort. It takes everybody in the school system working together, but it also takes members of the community coming alongside the school district, the nonprofits, all of the groups in the community that focus primarily on the different ethnic groups who need their support the most. It's all of us coming together around this notion of collective impact that makes a difference in the lives of these students and in their outcomes as well.
There are three levers that I would like to highlight when we think about improving student outcomes, particularly for minority students. And this is evidence in the work that we've done in DC public schools and the work that we are currently leading right now in CCS. As Dr. McDonald mentioned, setting the common expectations of what our teachers are teaching and what our students are learning, ensuring that they have access to grade level curriculum, that's step number one. And it's really our largest equity proposition across the entire district to ensure that all of our students have access to grade level content and curriculum. 4 years ago, we invited partners from TNTP to come and talk to our principals to kick off one of our leadership academies. The title of that session was The Opportunity Myth. The opportunity myth is based on research the TNTP did with districts across the country. And what they found was what our students, the results that our students were achieving, or the results that our students were having, was really based on lack of opportunity to have access to grade level curriculum. Because what they found when they visited classrooms and looked at the materials that our students that were using, the materials were 2 or 3 levels below grade level. So it's really the biggest equity proposition that faces children that look like me is really having access to grade level content. And so as a district, over the last 3 years, we have been relentless about our pursuit and ensuring that we close that equity gap to ensure that students across our district, 45,000 students in 113 schools, have access to a guaranteed and viable curriculum in English language arts and math pre-K through 12. And so that's the first step in closing the achievement gap and beginning to see progress and close that equity and access gap. The second piece, the second lever that I'd like to talk about is social emotional learning. We know all too often, and we've experienced this as a Columbus community every day. In this last week, we've lost 5 students for various different reasons, but we've experienced the trauma that happens in our community each and every day. The trauma that happens in our community spills over into our schools. Where we live, where we work, we have to help our students process that trauma in our schools and our classrooms each and every day. Our teachers are helping our students. Our safety and security officers are making connections with our students. Our guidance counselors are providing support groups for our students to help them deal with the experiences that they are having. I always say that our students come to school with 2 backpacks. They have the backpack with all of their resources and materials in it, and then they have the invisible backpack. And that invisible backpack is everything that they're dealing with at home, at school, before school, after school. And it is our moral imperative and it is our duty and responsibility to meet our students where they are and help them unpack both of their backpacks so we can ensure that they are ready to learn and they can show up as their best selves. And then the third lever that I want to talk about is early literacy. We know so much more about the brain research and how the brain develops. I am telling you today that it is a moral imperative for us to spend more time in the age range from 0 to 5 to support our students with the foundational skills that they need, because that's when the brain is developing. By the time they get to us in kindergarten, if we think we're going to begin the literacy journey in kindergarten, it's too late. And so what we can do as a community to expand access to early childhood programming. When we were in DC, we had universal early childhood programming for all of our 3- and 4-year-olds. We said school doesn't start at kindergarten. It starts when you turn 3. Come join us. And so those are opportunities that really lay the foundation so how we can set our students up for success. And the other piece about the early literacy piece, I'm very proud of the work that we are leading in CCS. Our teachers have invested hours in learning about the science of reading. This journey began for us 3 years ago. We recognized the gaps in early literacy and recognized that there was more that we could do to empower our teachers and our staff with the necessary skills that they need, not only to teach reading, but to understand how the brain works and how the brain processes letters and sounds. We wanted to give them the skills so that they could be on the cutting edge of this work. And 3 years later, now our governor is now introducing strategies to support this work across the state of Ohio. And so come join us in CCS. We're a model of what this looks like. And I'll also say that our early literacy data, when we look at our 3rd grade data, we've already seen the return on the investment. Last year, we had double-digit gains, over 10% increase in achievement for our 3rd graders. And our Black students and our minority students had even higher gains. So we are doing the work in CCS. We are making the necessary investments to prioritize not just to meet the needs of the whole child, not just the academic needs, but also the social emotional learning needs. We can't teach a portion of the child. We have to teach the whole child. And that includes supporting the needs of the whole child, the whole school, and the whole community.
Very good. We'll throw you a softball, and then we're going to jump into a lightning round of audience questions and as we move toward the close. Dr. Thomas, I'll start with you. For all of you, your favorite place to vacation, where do you go?
Jamaica.
Very good. You don't take a break, Dr. McDonald?
Now, he just had to say that, right?
It really is.
Knowing that I'm
It really
from Jamaica.
is. It really is. It really is.
I can pass on that because that's
Is it really
also my
Jamaica? Oh, very
favorite
good.
place to go.
Very good. Dr. Chapman?
I'm a water sign, so being near the water gives me peace. I would love to be on anyone's beach. Certainly, I'd love to go to the beaches in Jamaica, Montego Bay, Ochos Rios, but any beach would do for me to rejuvenate and restore by being near the water.
Very good. Well, whoever's successful, take the other two to Jamaica. How about that? All right, we're gonna jump into some questions. These are all audience submitted. I will ask each of you a different question during this round. I will start with Dr. Thomas. This question from the audience says, talk about your plans for addressing inequities in the learning environments throughout the district.
Wonderful. I think there's 4, and I'm going to use the word levers as well. In the work that we did in Cincinnati and the work that we did in the University of Virginia, again, we were attached to the business school and the School of Ed. So all of our work was very much research-based. Anything that we supported a school district to implement, there was a research base, there was data to support it. So we didn't just create strategies. Anything we did was around research and data. Leadership was always number 1. There's 4 levers, leadership being the first lever. And it's not just leadership at the school level, it's leadership actually at the district level. It's the relationship between the superintendent and the school board. And what does that relationship look like? Do we have a strategic plan in place? Have we created a culture of collective impact? Have we created a culture around collaboration and partnership? So leadership is always number 1. A second one is talent management. Talent simply means we have a structure to ensure that our brightest and best teachers and brightest and best leaders are in the schools that need them the most. A strategy around that. Obviously, that looks different in any setting, but we're going to make sure that the students who need teachers, the best teachers, the highest quality teachers, those teachers are in the schools that need them. So talent management is number 2. A third lever is what we call support and accountability. And that's simply the relationship between the school and the district. When I visited schools today, we had a lot of conversation about what the relationship between the school and the district is. Are there structures in place to support the needs of schools? And that's what central office should be doing. Central office should really be a support center. Not central office, it should be a support center. When you have students, when you have schools that are underperforming, central office is responsible for creating the structures and the supports and providing the resources to ensure that the teachers and principals at that underperforming school can be successful. If you've got low-performing schools, that's not a teacher issue, that's not a principal issue, it's a district issue. Central office plays that role. And then the fourth one, and we talked about the instructional infrastructure. Absolutely, you need a viable curriculum in place. It needs to be aligned to standards. There's a value in having strong pedagogy. And again, I led the work around teacher evaluation, so I'm very comfortable with that. You need some sort of formative assessment practice and structure in place. You need some sort of legitimate and formal intervention structure in place. So those pieces, all of the instructional infrastructure is critical, but it all starts with leadership. If you want a successful organization, be it school or district, it always starts with leadership. Talent management, the relationship between the school and the district, that's not adversarial, and in many districts, it is adversarial. And then fourth, again, that instructional infrastructure. So when we start talking about inequities, that's a district conversation. Unfortunately, we normally think that that's a school-level conversation. It should be a district conversation.
Very good. Dr. McDonald, this question, one of the organizations represented here is serves mothers who've been affected by violence. What is your intended response for the growing violence we are seeing happening in our schools?
Yes, of course, that's quite concerning to me. And, I read with dismay something that recently happened in one of the schools here. And I have to commend the administration for acting appropriately to mitigate those issues of violence on the campus. So I think there's a two-pronged approach that should be utilized. One is whenever there's an issue of violence on a campus, strong and swift action must be taken right away, so that students can feel a sense of safety, and parents can feel like it's okay to send their kids to school because they'll be learning in a safe environment. Now, if you're utilizing a measure that's punitive or a measure that might be a little bit harsh in the eyes of some, then the idea is not to have that as a permanent solution, but rather follow that up with some additional strategies that will support students on the campuses. So specifically, what I'm talking about is that as superintendent, I would work with the school site leader to make sure that the culture on the campus is such that students have the skills necessary to resolve their issues. That there's at least one adult on the school site that students can go to if there's an issue. And that we implement such things as restorative practices so that students learn how to make right some of the things that they do in terms of harming others. One of the greatest things that can happen on a school site in terms of mitigating disciplinary issues and acts of violence is a strong visionary principal who creates the kind of environment that's conducive to collegiality among students and staff, the kind of environment that students feel, and staff as well, feel proud to be a part of. And then, of course, equipping the staff, the principal, and all the teachers with the skills necessary to work with these students in terms of peer mediation, in terms of running the restorative circles that are necessary, and just making sure that we provide a lot of resources from central offices to make sure that the school sites get to where they need to go. I can point to the high schools in our school system where incidents of violence, incidences of disciplinary issues have been greatly reduced because of the strategies that I just talked about. Again, having a strong visionary leader on campus that sets the tone for the entire campus, providing the kind of training that teachers and staff and students will need. And we can't leave the students out. We're providing peer mediation training through the Western Justice Center in Pasadena for our students as well. Because I think when you have students that are able to work with their peers to resolve issues, I think that's far more powerful than any adult getting in the middle of that. So providing all of the training necessary, collaborating with external partners. In some cases, some of the students really need mentors. So providing those kinds of opportunities for students. And again, it goes back to the notion of collective impact. Just having that web of support, not just from individuals at the school site or even in the central offices, but from the community as well. Just conveying that message to the students that, you know what, we support you. We're going to do everything that we can to make sure that you have what you need, so that students don't feel like the way to resolve issues is to resort to violence. So, and I want to make one more point. Okay, then I'll leave it at that.
All right, Dr. Chapman, I want these two questions were similar, and so I'm going to combine them for you, and they deal with students actually showing up for school. The first one is, what is your plan to recover the 4,000 students we've lost since the pandemic? And then secondly, what are your plans to address truancy issues? So somewhat related, somewhat disparate.
Thank you, Mo, for that question. This work, give you a perfect example. A couple of years ago, when I came to Columbus City Schools, one of the challenges that I recognized is that we did not have a proactive district-wide strategy to support attendance. We certainly had all of the punitive work around supporting attendance was what do we do once a student becomes truant? This is the documentation that we complete, these are the phone calls we make, but at that point, the student has already missed 15 days of school. It's too late. And so what we've done in the last couple of years is partnered with a national organization called Attendance Works. Attendance Works works with districts and even having a partnership with the Ohio Department of Education to work with the district to develop a district-wide strategy to support proactive efforts and measures to support attendance. And this goes back to engagement and relationships. That's a common theme throughout the night. But it really helping us as a district to develop a clear strategy around how we create greater awareness around attendance and support proactive strategies for making sure that our students know, that means showing the data, how many absences a student has had, talking with our families and our parents and our community. Like even if a student misses just 1 day of school each month, that adds up. You miss 10 days of instruction, now you're chronically absent. We talked about the enabling conditions of how we close the achievement gap. Attendance is a key factor in that. If our students are missing, if they miss 10 days of school in kindergarten and 10 days of school in first grade and 10 days, that's time that's lost. Time, instructional time is always the X factor. We have to do everything that we can to make up for the lost time and prioritize instructional time. We saw this with the pandemic. Our schools were closed for way too long, right? And all of the research says that on average across the country, our students lost 22 weeks of instruction because we were transitioned to remote instruction. And so developing intentional strategies to support a district-wide strategy as well as a building-based strategies to support attendance, we have to engage in proactive strategies. We can't wait until after our students have accumulated 10 absences. I'm a parent in the district. If my son misses school for just 1 day because he's sick, of course, I get a text message. Your child has missed 1 day of school. And then the next text message, your child has missed 2 days of school. Please contact us if you need support or resources. So we are reaching out to our families to share the data with them, to make sure that they know we're being very transparent about each child's attendance, the patterns of behavior, and those are patterns of behavior that we have to correct as early as pre-K and kindergarten, because we don't want our students to get into a habit or a pattern of missing too many days of school.
Good. Well, we are almost out of time. I'm going to give you all just a moment to do a closing statement. I'm also going to pose a final question from our audience as a part of your 90 seconds of closing, so we get folks out of here on time. The question part will be, how will you personally work to make sure schools in our community are places of joy, care, and value where children and teachers want to be? And as a part of that, I'd like you to leave any further information you'd like to leave with this audience and those watching online. I think we started with Dr. Chapman, is that right? So we will start with Dr. Thomas. We'll go in reverse order.
I'm going to try to do this in 90 seconds. In regards to the joy, care, and value piece, there's two data points I'll share. The population in Columbus has increased by about 200,000 students over the past 20 years. The enrollment in the district has actually decreased by 25% during that exact same time. So no matter how we look at it, the data says that whatever we're doing to attempt to create joy, care, and value within the district, there's many people in the community it doesn't resonate with. That's what the data says. That's not my data, that's what the data says. So I do think we need to look at doing some things slightly different to adjust, to react to what that data says. The last thing, and I think this is also sort of the closing statement, so I'll take about 30 seconds to simply respond to a couple things that you may have read in the paper, that you've read online. Obviously, I don't have enough time to go into all of those pieces. I'll simply share 3 pieces, just bullet points. In my role in Georgia, the legislation had me report to the State Board of Ed. I didn't report to the state superintendent. The state superintendent didn't appreciate that. The state superintendent created an audit that I didn't know about, that the people that I reported to didn't know about. I was never interviewed. My senior team was never interviewed. 4 weeks went past before I even knew what the so-called allegations were. 4 weeks. Once I saw it, I was given a chance to respond. When I responded, the state board that I reported to on a 14-0 vote ended the matter. As a part of ending the matter, I received a sizable financial settlement to attempt to, resolve it to some extent. So I just wanted to provide just a little bit of clarity and a little bit of context there. There's obviously other pieces to that, but just wanted to provide a little bit of context to that.
Thank you, Dr. Thomas.
Hello? Okay. So I would just say, as far as our campuses being places of joy, it really speaks to the ability of the site leader, the principal, to work closely with teachers and staff to ensure that there's a culture and climate on that campus whereby students feel connected to an adult, feel connected to the campus, feel like the learning they're receiving is relevant and meaningful. Of course, with support from central offices. It is paramount that site leaders work very closely with all of the key educational partners, such as parents and community members, to provide the necessary support for our students, ensuring that all students are successful and that they feel like they can bring their authentic self to the school site is paramount. And so I would say, if I were to be selected as the superintendent of this great district, I would work very closely with all of the site leaders, with all of the central offices staff, with all of our key partners to ensure that students feel like when they show up to their campus, they are loved, they're respected, and the adults have high expectations of them. So I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to spend some time with you today. I want to say that more than ever, I want to be a part of this team. The visit to the school sites just solidified that for me. All of the meetings with community members, with the different groups, and just to see the love for the district. So many of you were students in the district and came back to serve. And what that says to me is that this is an environment, this is a community that cares deeply about the school system, and I think that's half the battle. So if I'm selected as a superintendent, together we will make things happen on behalf of our students and cause our district to become the school district of choice for families and a shining light for not only the current students, but for future generations of students. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chapman.
I love this question. When I think about creating learning communities filled with joy and love, I think about happiness and joy comes from within. I can't make someone be happy, right? But together we can create enriching learning environments where our teachers want to teach, our custodians want to work, our secretaries want to work, and create environments that are enriching and joyous for everyone. Culture is contagious. And earlier today, when I was at Briggs High School, DeMarcus, one of the students, I told him that I was going to share this quote if I could tonight at the session. But he said, culture, if you build the culture, the community will follow. And so he, again, from the mouths of babes, stressed the importance of creating the culture that we all want to work and learn and grow in. Each and every one of our students, when they come to us, they start off with all the joy and the curiosity for learning. it's up to us to make sure that we don't rob them of that joy and steal their joy. We have to create warm and loving environments so that our students continue to keep that same curiosity that they have at the age of 3, at the age of 5, at the age of 7. They're curious about their world. They're curious about learning. They want to ask so many questions. But it's our responsibility and our duty to create that type of culture where that type of learning and curiosity is infectious and it continues. And as a leader and the lead learner and the lead teacher and the CEO of the district, it's our responsibility to articulate that clear vision and mission throughout the organization. But not only is it our responsibility to do that, we want to create the opportunity so that everyone in the entire district, all 9,000 employees and 45,000 students, feel as if they are on a mission with us to achieve our shared vision and make a difference for the lives of each and every one of our students each and every day.
Wow, such a thoughtful conversation. I'm going to prepare to release our finalists from the stage, but join me in thanking for their responses, Dr. Angela Chapman, Dr. Brian McDonald, and Dr. George Eric Thomas. So, in just a moment, we will bring up a QR code for those of you in the room as well as online. That QR code links to a survey where we can capture your feedback about your feelings about the candidates, as well as a few other questions. So if you just scan that with your smartphones, it will take you to a survey that way you can provide us some feedback that will also be shared with our board. I would remind you that all the questions that you submitted outside, in addition to the ones I asked live today, are all being aggregated and given to the Board of Education as they will be formally interviewing these candidates next week. And so they will have their own announcement about when they expect to announce a actual superintendent for Columbus City Schools. Thank you to all of you for your attendance tonight. It was a quick conversation, but a good one. And so we really appreciate your thoughtful questions and your engagement during this process. With that, thank you for, as always, for staying engaged with our schools. Enjoy your evening. Be safe getting home. Thank you.